Okay, thank you for coming to hear about the two measures on the ballot, their pros and cons, and what people or groups are financing them. My name is Martha Beatty, and I'm chair of our League San Jose Santa Clara Pros and Cons team. Our two speakers tonight are Vicki Muller-Overa and Mary Collins. We'll answer as many of your questions as time allows. Please post them in the chat. We'll respond to questions about each measure after that measure has been discussed by our panelists. Elizabeth Marquez Bernardino has the honor and the maybe harassing job of being our monitor for the chat, and she will ask the panelists the questions you have about each measure. You're going to get a copy of our slides so you can refer back to them, plus the recording will be posted on our website. And Elizabeth can post that in the chat. What the website is lwvsjsc.org/pros and cons with dashes in between. Okay, most people know about League. Excuse me, next slide. It was founded in 1920 when women got the vote so that these women could be educated about what was on their ballots. We strive to empower voters. Now, vote, you all, and defend democracy. We actually have three roles: education, and advocacy. Education 1 is voter service, and that's what we're doing tonight. No supporting or opposing candidates or political parties. It's impartial, nonpartisan information. Education 2 is educating voters about subjects of interest. Just last month, the 5 county leagues convened a program focused on executive power with legal experts from Stanford and Santa Clara University. And we're planning one on urban forest to come. Advocacy. We often advocate for or against particular policies about areas of public interest, which we've studied and adopted positions. We recently adopted a nationwide position about the federal judiciary system, and I've been waiting for our Washington lobbyists to implement it, either by supporting or opposing some legislation or speaking out in op-eds and so on. Okay, next slide. Okay. In California, our ballots have propositions, referenda, and local measures. Propositions apply to the entire state, proposing new laws. Usually they need a 50% plus one vote to pass. Props get on the ballot in two ways: the state legislature through a 2/3 vote of both houses if proposing a change to our huge state constitution, or adding a new tax or bond, otherwise just 50% plus one. And citizens can also use the initiative process, collecting signatures across the state in certain proportions. And then there are referenda, which may be proposed by citizens to repeal a statute or part of a statute passed by the legislature in the last 90 days. This ballot has none of those. I don't think they would ever have any on a special election. And on local measures, they're put on the ballot by local government entities or citizens. Okay, next slide. How to evaluate voting propositions, ballot measures in general, actual. I really think that it is very easy on both of these. They're easier to explain than they are to decide upon how you want to vote. So it's particularly important to hear how to evaluate them. Examine what the measure wants to accomplish. Do you agree with these goals? Is the measure consistent with your idea of good government? Do you think the proposed changes will make things better? Is the measure written well? Will it create conflicts in law that might require courts to resolve that? Is it good government, or will it cause more problems than it will resolve? Does the measure create its own revenue source? Does it earmark, restrict, or obligate government revenues? If so, weigh the benefits of securing funding for this measure against the cost of reducing overall flexibility in the budget. Does the measure mandate a government program or service without addressing how it will be funded? Does the measure deal with one issue that can be easily decided by a yes or no vote? Or is it so complex that it should be thoroughly examined in the legislative or local government arena? And who are the real sponsors and opponents of the measure? Check where the money is coming from. Our sources of this are given at the bottom of each campaign finance slide. And lastly, be wary of distortion tactics and commercials that rely on image but tell nothing of substance about the measure. Beware of half-truths. And now we move over to the real subject of this pros and cons. And we go first to Prop 50. And Vicki Muller Olvera is going to be taking over. And thank you.
Thanks, Martha. I'm going to talk about Prop 50. Prop 50 is a legislative constitutional amendment. It authorizes temporary changes to congressional district maps. It was put on the ballot by the legislature and now submitted to us, the voters, for approval. It requires a simple majority or 50+1 votes to pass. So let's begin with a quick little tour of what you're going to see on your ballot and then discuss. So Prop 50 change is temporary. It requires new legislatively drawn congressional district maps to be used in the 2026, 28, and 2030 elections, after which the Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission, or for this talk, we'll just call them the commission, will resume enacting congressional district maps. We'll discuss the
Vicki, I
fiscal
think you
effects.
wanted to change the slide, didn't you? Yeah.
We'll discuss next. We'll discuss the fiscal effects. Next slide, please. So Prop 50 is a direct response to Texas's mid-decade partisan congressional districting. Prop 50 retains the commission and directs it to resume enacting congressional district maps after the 2030 census and every 10 years after that. Prop 50 establishes state policy supporting redistricting commissions nationwide. Next slide, please. All right, we're going to have a little bit of background to make sure we're all on the same page, okay? So Congress is made up of two parts, the U.S. Senate and the U.S. House of Representatives, or for short, the House. Okay, so each state is represented by 2 senators with 100 senators in total. So that was easy. The House is a little bit different. It has 435 members. The number of representatives in the House for each state depends on how many people live in the state. So each member in the House represents an area. It's called a congressional district. So every 10 years, the U.S. Census counts the number of people who live in the U.S. The last census was done in 2020, and the next one's going to be in 2030. This count is used to determine how many representatives in the House each state gets for the next 10 years. So every state draws congressional district maps following the U.S. Census. Every 10 years after the census is complete, states draw new congressional district maps, and this process is called redistricting. California has 52 congressional districts, and voters who live in each congressional district elect one member of the House every 2 years to represent them. The next election for all 435 representatives nationwide will be in November of 2026. When drawing their maps, each state has to follow federal laws. For example, each congressional district must represent about the same number of people And federal laws prohibit voter qualifications that affect the right to vote based on race or minority membership or color. Next slide, please. The California state law requires the commission to avoid splitting up neighborhoods or local communities of interest to the extent possible. State law also prohibits the commission from considering political parties, current office holders, or people running for office when it draws the maps. So across the US, each state decides what process they want to use to draw its new congressional district maps. So state legislatures draw these maps in most states, but some states use commissions to do it, like here in California. Also, Arizona, Colorado, Idaho, Michigan, Montana, and Washington all use independent commissions. But New York, Utah, Virginia, New Jersey, Ohio, and Iowa all have kind of a hybrid system with advisory boards that work together with the legislature. So here in California, before 2010, the legislature drew our congressional district maps. In 2010, voters decided to give this job to the commission. The commission includes 14 members. That's 5 Democrats, 5 Republicans, and 4 members who are not registered with either of these two political parties. Next slide, please. So the commission drew our current maps based on the 2020 census, and these maps have been used since the 2022 congressional elections. So as stated earlier, states draw these new maps every 10 years, right? An exception to this norm is if a court orders changes to comply with law. But this past August in Texas, the legislature passed a bill to adopt new mid-decade maps for the 2026 elections without a court order. And several other states voluntarily followed, including us here in California, Missouri, Florida, Kansas, and North Carolina. One state, Ohio has a congressional map that's required by law to change before the 2026 elections. There's also Georgia and Louisiana and Utah that are dealing with legal challenges that will lead to new maps. So this is a bit of a dynamic situation we're in. Next slide, please. The proposal. Prop 50 replaces California's current congressional district maps with new legislatively drawn maps. The total number of districts would not change. Prop 50's maps must follow federal law, but they're not required to follow the state requirements placed on the commission. California would use the Prop 50 maps for congressional districts starting in 2026 until the commission draws new district maps after the 2030 US Census. In our local area, there are some minor changes. Next slide. Statewide, Prop 50 seeks to pick up a few Democratic seats in Congress, and 5 districts are targeted. D1 in Chico, D3 in Greater Sacramento, D22 in the San Joaquin Valley, 41 Riverside, and 48 in San Diego. These districts are seeing most of the change, right? So Prop 50 asks the US Congress to change federal law and propose an amendment to the US Constitution to require redistricting be done by fair, independent, and nonpartisan redistricting commissions nationwide. So Prop 50 doesn't change any federal laws, and it doesn't require any particular action of Congress or the California legislature. Next slide, please. So what are the proposed districts in our area? So there are no changes in Gilroy or Morgan Hill or D19, Panetta's district. But there are some changes in San Jose and in Milpitas. Next slide. So on this map, we see in the green our current districts, with the purple showing proposed Prop 50 changes, right? And this is taken from the statewide database.org. You can also go to calmatters.org or use the little QR code. The purple in their maps are the current maps, and the dotted yellow are proposed district changes. So locally, what we would experience would be D18 Lofgren's district to D17 Kana's district, with small changes in D16, which is Liccardo's district. Okay, next slide, please. Let's talk about the fiscal effects. If Prop 50 passes, there's a one-time cost to the states and the counties. This is the cost of like rejigging election systems to incorporate new congressional districts. The Legislative Analyst Office estimates the fiscal effect of Prop 50 to be about $200,000 to the state and a few $1,000,000 to all 58 counties. There's also another cost. That's the cost of holding a statewide election on Tuesday, November 4th, to vote for Prop 50. The state will reimburse all counties for holding this election, and the cost is estimated by the Department of Finance to be approximately $251 million. This is not an impact of Prop 50, it's the cost of the legislature deciding to have us vote on Prop 50. Next slide, please. So what are supporters saying about Prop 50? It's good to know that these arguments are made by advocacy groups, and they may or may not be accurate or true. Okay, so the supporters argue that Prop 50 Prop 50 is needed because Republicans are making an unprecedented power grab to steal the 2026 election in Texas and other states. And this is an emergency for our democracy. Excuse me. They say that Prop 50 gives voters the power to approve emergency district maps in response to Trump's election rigging scheme. They argue that it's temporary, reaffirming the Redistricting Commission's authority to draw congressional district maps after the next census. But what are opponents saying? Again, these arguments are made by advocacy groups, and they may or may not be accurate or true. The opponents argue that Prop 50 was written by politicians, for politicians, removing state safeguards to keep election maps fair. They argue that Prop 50 opens the door for Sacramento to keep drawing election maps beyond 2031. They also argue that districts don't belong to either party, and that they belong to the people, but party bosses want to call the shots again, and they say no to a pay-to-play system. Next slide. So the signatories on the supporting side, they include electeds, and the opponents include community organizations, a television station owner, and an organization of faith-based underserved. As of October 1st, supporters have raised a total of $133.8 million from 147. I'm sorry, contribute 1,000. I'm sorry, I can't read. I'm losing my internet connection. Supporters have account.
Vicki, do you
Donors,
want me to, you want me to break in and do that because of your internet connection?
my internet keeps coming and
Yeah.
going. Donors opposing
Okay.
have raised a total of $800.4 million from 357 contributions. I apologize.
No.
Did,
Mhm.
okay. Let's see. Next slide. A yes vote on this measure means that the state would use new legislatively drawn congressional district maps starting in 2026. So California's new maps would be used until California Citizens Redistricting Commission draws new maps following the 2030 U.S. Census. And a no vote on this measure means that current congressional district maps drawn by the commission would continue to be used in California until the commission draws new maps following the 2030 U.S. Census. And that's Prop 50. Do we have any questions? Are there any questions on Prop 50?
Elizabeth, you're muted.
Sorry, Martha. I do
Mhm.
not see any questions on
Come on.
Prop 50.
Wow. Okay.
Okay. I'm sorry, I keep losing my internet connection. Are there any last call for questions? Okay, why don't we turn it over to Mary, and she's going to talk to us about Measure A.
Thank you very much, Vicki, Martha, and Elizabeth. Okay, Measure A is a county measure as opposed to a statewide measure. It's to authorize the county of Santa Clara to increase the sales tax by 5/8%. And it's been placed on the ballot by the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors. So the question that this is asking us to vote on, yes or no, is to help our community address severe federal cuts enacted by the President and Congress to support critical local services such as trauma, emergency room, mental health, public safety, and to reduce the risk of hospital closures at Santa Clara Valley Healthcare and other service cuts, shall the County of Santa Clara adopt a 5/8 general sales tax for 5 years that would provide approximately $330 million annually, and it's not available to the federal government and is subject to independent audits and to oversight. Next slide, please. So the situation that they're responding to is that the U.S. Congress voted to enact H.R. 1, and this significantly is cutting federal support for all public services. And this is nationwide, not just us. And in our county, the largest cuts are federal support of Medi-Cal and the CalFresh programs. Medi-Cal are Medicaid issues, and these are reduced by the bill. CalFresh, the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, SNAP, was dramatically reduced. So these two programs were the biggest medical issues that are going to be hurt by H.R. 1. There were also cuts to housing and education. Next slide, please. So this proposal, it was unanimous. The County Board of Supervisors put it on the ballot, claiming a fiscal emergency. They anticipate that each year, due to the budget cuts, they're going to have $1 billion lost in annual revenue. And that's going to affect all the areas in the county. They hope that this Measure A would partially offset the billion loss by producing 330 million annually, or basically a third of the lost revenue. For this to pass, state law requires a majority vote for this to pass. And what they're telling us, the supervisors are saying that Measure A will be subjected to independent oversight and audits, and that each year the county must provide an annual report of the expenditures, so that even though it seems a large amount of money, we will be able to get reports on how the money is being spent. Next slide, please. Okay, in general, this is a very complicated slide, but in general, it's just saying that California has a limit on local sales taxes, a combined 2% cap on all transactions. And this is in addition to statewide taxes. Santa Clara County has received a temporary special legislative authority, and this was passed in 2023 by Senator Dave Cortese, what proposed it, to propose this 5/8 cents increase that is not subject to the usual 2% combined limit. So this exception would allow the voters to have a higher tax, if approved by the voters, for a limited time, which would be up to 9.75% sales tax for 5 years. The tax, if approved, the tax would begin April 1st, 2026 for 5 years. Now, it's also good to know that this is a general tax, so it could be used for any legitimate county purpose. Next slide, please. Again, just to remind you, as Vicki had said, these are what the supporters, and then we're going to have what the opponents are saying. These are the arguments of the advocacy group. We're not saying it's totally accurate, so it may or may not be accurate or true. But what the supporters are saying is keep our local hospitals open. HR has caused a major crisis. Santa Clara County will have $1 billion shortfall because of HR 1. And healthcare in our county is hit the hardest. Even those with private insurance, so not dependent upon the county for services, they're going to be affected due to longer wait times and higher costs, which will occur because of the shortfall and other costs. This tax increase will only last 5 years, and all the proceeds from this tax will stay in our county. It doesn't go any to the state, it stays in our county. Next, thank you. What the opponents are saying, the county faces this year, the county faces a $3 billion deficit, not just the $1 billion due to the HR 1, and that 330 million won't scratch the surface, but will guarantee future tax hikes. This tax is regressive in that it hits the hard-working families and the poor the hardest. This is a last-minute Band-Aid covering years of mismanagement. And while they're talking about healthcare is the biggest issue, not a dime is dedicated or guaranteed to healthcare. Funds can be spent on any county issue. Oversight is good, but it is not binding to ensure that the promises or other factors are kept. Next slide, please. All right, this has a number, I'm gonna let you look at it yourself, a number of supporters and opponents. If you notice, the supporters are county, medical, board of supervisors, personnel, a lot of county personnel and medical personnel. The opponents, you have a number of city council people and mayors and former mayors and assemblymen. All right, next slide, please. There have been a number of 98 contributors giving $2.5 million to support this issue. And again, you can see a lot of them are county and health organizations. And so far, there has been one person who has contributed, it looks like it's a loan actually, to opposing a whopping $357. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so this issue then, a majority vote is needed to pass. So what a yes vote means, to approve a 6.25% sales tax increase for a 5-year limit to raise approximately $330 million per year for those 5 years. Certain household expenses like rent, groceries, utilities are not subject to sales tax in California and would not be and are excluded from this tax increase. A no vote on this measure means reject the sales tax increase and go on as we're going on now. I think this is the next slide. We go into questions. If people have any questions, you have it in the chat, and Elizabeth will let us know what they are.
I don't see any questions in the chat.
See, I see my little note says 4. Is it not a question?
I've been inputting sources in the chat.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Tina, I think, asked what Tina Morrell made a statement that I don't think Mary put on there, that the San Jose's sales tax would be 10% if Measure A passes. Just an additional tidbit of information that we should be interested. It's not the same, of course, in other cities and so on, because they might have their own extra taxes that they've already voted in.
Okay.
So that's a good, addition to what was
All
said.
right. Yeah, good. Thank you.
My goodness.
All
People
right.
just-
Well, then, yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward. Then, Justin, again, if Measure A passes, there's going to be an increase for 5 years starting next year. If it doesn't, we will stay at the same tax basis that we have now. Thank you.
Okay, well, we can go on to the next slide. This is I think everybody's still eating. So I don't know. Anyway, so just wanted to give you some more general information that might be really interesting for you. And I think that Elizabeth's going to put these in the chat in case you want them there. You will also have them on the slides that we send. So one way or another, you should be able to use the URLs to get to the websites. First is Vote 411, and this is a league sponsored, a U.S. league, overall has Vote 411. What you do, you go in there and you just enter your address, and it will give you your exact ballot for the election, and which is sometimes really, really useful when people are talking about various, district votes and so on. This one is pretty clear cut what's on your ballot. You have the assessor's race and then these two measures. But come probably next November, it's going to be a different story. So it'll become very, very useful to you, and you can make the comparisons among what statements have been made among candidates and so on. And there's a lot of help for you on that. And I think that you'll get a lot more use out of it in the fall, and maybe in the spring. The spring has only I'm expanding on this since I have a little bit of extra time, but maybe in the spring, because we have some legislative measures can be on the ballot, but it will still be a lot smaller than it will be in November, because that's when the voters' initiatives come on it too. So California Votes just has Cal Votes as a CA Votes. The League Education Fund has a site which gives a lot of voter resources. One thing on there that we haven't mentioned, there's an easy voter guide on there, and that not only gives a pretty complete, more complete than they usually do, since they had just the one measure to give an explanation of Prop 50, and you can go on there to see that. Usually it's more of a easy voter guide, and we just have a few sentences about each topic of the background for it and what the proposal is, and so on and so forth. But they have more space, so are using it. And it's also information about how to vote and how to register and so on. So that's a really handy source to have, as CA Votes, and you can go in there and see what's on there. Ballotpedia is another source of information about ballot measures on every race. Then we have the voter guide. Sometimes people like to have an online version of that rather than the one that you got in the mail. And so this gives how you can get to that. And that, of course, it gives you what's on the ballot, as far as, and it gives you the legislative analysts' full analysis of Prop 50. Also gives the exact wording in the Prop 50, sort of the text of what would be in the law and what actually happens. Some of those are so long you get lost before the end. I think the Privacy Act one was like 98 pages or something like that, just the text. So it's just sort of, sometimes it's overwhelming, but this one's pretty clear what's going into the law that should cover this. We'd already given you the power surge reference, because that gives the information on the state level about the proposition financing. And then the LAO, the Legislative Analyst's Office, they do this wonderful ballot analysis. They also give other analyses of other generally legislative bills that have come up that they want to be exploring further information on. So I guess that's all we have on this side. So Carol, do you want to change the slide? Okay, basic election facts. Special election is November 4th. If you haven't registered, then you can register for conditional thereafter, and that can happen at vote centers. And oops, I had set an alarm so that I knew we were at the place that we had to try and cut off questions, but okay. The vote by mail ballots have been mailed out. So you should have gotten yours if you had registered by that time. Vote centers are open, and you go to sccvote.org, and that will give you the information about where the vote centers are. And that's where you would go if you want to cast a conditional ballot. now, since you can't do the regular ballot. Okay, the next slide is how to vote. You can return your ballot 3 ways. By mail, no postage is necessary. By ballot drop box, and no postage is necessary for that either. And the rovservices.sac.gov would have that available where the ballot drop boxes are. I know that I'm downtown, so near me there's one at the MLK library, and I could go and probably will go and drop mine in there if I don't put it in the mail. And then the other thing that they would have there is the vote center. And the interesting thing is, unlike when we had precincts, you had to go to your own precinct. But I mean, we still have precincts, but you don't have to go to that particular vote center. You can vote anywhere in the county, which is really handy if you live here but go up to Palo Alto to work or whatever. So you can, and also when at the if you sign up, you can track your ballot as it goes through all the various stages. And I find that really useful. It's just confirming they've received my ballot. They sent me a statement saying that they had sent it out. And once I have turned it in and they've received it, they'll tell me. And once it's been counted, they'll tell me. So that's a great tool to just, say, okay, I did it. I've voted, and they have received it, and that's wonderful. So, okay, the last slide, vote on or before November 4th. That's the basic end. And congratulations for coming to educate yourself about the measures on this special election ballot. Now, we have some extra time. If anyone has any additional questions at all that they would like to ask, I don't know if mine has a raised hand on it. It seems like maybe you could raise hands. I can't see the raised hands, so that wouldn't help me, but at least could put them in the chat if you um, have any questions that you've thought of that you would like to have answers on, because we would be happy to answer them. Well, I guess not. So thank you very much, and have a good evening, and please go out and vote so that we can help keep our democracy and keep it strong. Thanks.